Happy New Year!
Hi, I'm Jack.
Hi, I'm Ben.
Have a Happy New Year! And thank you for watching This Week in Location-Based Marketing.
Welcome to This Week in Location-Based Marketing, the most trusted podcast dedicated to the new business of location. It is time for This Week in Location-Based Marketing. This is episode number 162. We're doing this live late in the evening on December 29th, 2013. This is our predictions show. My name is Rob Woodbridge from Untether.tv. In case you forget, it is single-handedly the largest resource to understand how to bring mobile into your business. And I'm located in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. With me as always, Asif?
Asif Khan from the Location-Based Marketing Association in Toronto. We have power. We don't have ice. It's all good, finally. And yes, looking forward to talking about all that went on this year and all that's maybe going to go on next year.
Yeah, you know what? It's a lark. It's a crapshoot. But, this is where we actually take a look back and see how we did on our predictions last year. We also offer a little bit of insight about what we think are the biggest stories, the biggest disappointments. We're taking a stab at some predictions for next year and maybe a couple of companies to watch, not to invest in. We don't condone investing in these ideas. These are companies that we think that will have a good year, a breakout year, so to speak. And that's what the show is. No guest, no resource, no stories, just a little bit of a conversation. We'll get you in and out here probably in about 45 minutes. That's about right, isn't it, Asif?
I think so.
What a year it was. You know, I have to tell you, before we even begin, the greatest thing happened to me this morning. Can I tell you about it just for 2 seconds?
Yeah, absolutely.
This is, I swear, it's the greatest thing. So Amazon, my favorite company on the planet, made a big mistake. I don't even know if it was a mistake. It might have been done on purpose for those people who were paying attention. But I was up at around midnight this morning, and I was just finishing off, and I got this little ping on my notification about Bruce Springsteen. You know, there hasn't been an episode in this entire year that we haven't talked about Bruce Springsteen, so I have to bring it up. Amazon somehow released Bruce Springsteen's album that isn't due out in stores till January 14th. They didn't release the whole album. What they did is they put out the MP3s on an individual basis, but you could buy them. And guess what I did?
You got them all.
I bought them. I bought them at like bright and early this morning, and then as soon as I did, like literally as soon as I did, they shut them off. But I got a copy of Bruce Springsteen's album from Amazon.com, the MP3s, downloaded on my device 14 days before the release date. What a great way to end the year, I'd say. Is that a good sign?
That's a pretty nice little Christmas present, I say.
That is a great sign. That is a great sign. My kids have been just all over Justin Timberlake. They love Justin Timberlake. It's time to bring them back into the Bruce Springsteen fold. But I thought, you know what? Here's a perfect example of, digital gone right for me, gone wrong for Bruce, and gone wrong for Amazon. But I am so thankful that that happened. Booyah! So what have I been doing all day? Not preparing for the show, listening to Bruce Springsteen.
And are you happy with it, Rob?
I am, of course. Somebody once told me, and I'm sorry, I'm about to swear. Actually, a good friend of mine a long time ago, his name was John Healy, he said, Woody, Springsteen could shit on vinyl and you'd still like it. That's pretty much it. So I'm not, I am certainly a biased opinion. So it's the greatest album ever released in this year. So anyway, that was my story. Gotta love Amazon. Thank you, Amazon. Maybe it was just for me because I've been so nice to them. So that I think is the greatest. That's the biggest story for me of 2013. So thank you very much.
Okay.
Short show.
We're done.
We are.
Yeah.
Asif, we made some bold predictions last year. Jump into the meat of it here. We made some bold predictions last year. We made 6 of them. I don't think we're going to get through 6 this year, but I want to take a little look-see and see how we did. And I'm going to be pretty lenient. I think we should be lenient because, we probably put ourselves out on the limb here for a little bit. I'm going to start with, do you want to start with yours or mine? Does it matter? You want to start with yours?
No, you go ahead.
Okay. Well, my predictions were pretty simple. They were 3 predictions. I said that the battle for the living room will become a reality. The shift from fat finger-friendly CPMs to action metrics will happen, and same-day delivery will be cracked. And I think that, you know, I think I touched on a lot of these things, but I'm pretty disappointed with the outcome of all three of my predictions. The first, the battle for the living room becomes a reality. I think that we're starting to see that come through now, but I do believe that it's going to take a couple of more years in order to be able to, for this to actually happen. From a location marketing standpoint, we're nowhere near where I hoped we would be at the end of this year. You know, I think that we're starting to get that with the consoles and Apple TV, and certainly the use of the tablets in the living room, but we're nowhere near where I thought we would be when it comes to location and context. So I'm, you know, I think if it's a full point, I would give myself 0 on that.
Come on.
Maybe a little bit more. Maybe
2.
Maybe,
how's that?
Yeah, 0.2. Yeah. I definitely think that. So the shift from fat finger friendly CPMs to action metrics, we are nowhere near that. We're still counting revenue, counting dollars in advertising, and not its impact. That is the most disappointing to me of the predictions that didn't happen for me this past year, 2013. And then obviously same day delivery will be cracked. Not until Amazon flies the drones, brother. Not until Amazon flies the drones will that be ready. We are close, but not as pervasive as I thought. Certainly not up in Canada. Maybe bits and pieces of California. Certainly San Francisco is there. And you know, PayPal and Amazon are getting into this, but it's going to take a little bit of while to roll out. So I you know, out of the 3 points, you know, there I would probably give myself, you know, an A for effort, but half a point. Yeah, it was not a good year. It was not a good year.
I wouldn't say it was that bad, Rob, but yeah, I mean, certainly not where you wanted it to be, or where I wanted those things to be either. So
I'm an optimist. That's what I realized.
We all are.
Yeah.
All right. Well, my 3 were one was the rise of the location-aware non-phone device, and the second one was the kind of growth in context-driven apps. And the third was what I call data is the new oil, or you know, companies starting to realize, you know, that the location is not a platform, but it's really all about the data and what we can do with it. And specifically, I said that factual and locationary were going to have big years around that point. So on the rise of the location-aware non-phone device, we've started to see some movement into the car. We'll probably talk about that a little bit more for this year, this coming year as well. But you know, Google glasses and things like that are coming. I wouldn't say we're there yet. We're certainly not as far along as I thought we were going to be. You know, we are starting to see some movement in other non-phone device things, like, you know, bus shelters, and remember the Qualcomm project that we talked about a while back. So, you know, some things are coming along in that regard, but more room to grow. Context-driven apps is probably where I'm most disappointed, I would say. I think this is huge potential to, you know, build apps that are delivered when it makes sense. Context and times, connected to smart buildings, all that kind of stuff. None of that's happening yet. So complete miss by me on that front. Although it's what I'm hoping and dreaming for. And on the data is the new oil piece. Yeah, I think you know, we are starting to see companies realize the value of the location data and doing all sorts of things with it. Factual is progressing nicely, but you know, didn't make any major splash. Locationary, on the other hand, did. Obviously, they were acquired by Apple this year, so they you know, I guess I hit on that one. But there you go.
Yeah, you know, I think that the context-driven app, we're starting to see the germination of that, the seeds of that through Google Now and through a lot of the apps that I use pretty much every day right now. You know, Heyday and those guys. I think that, you know, they're in the data collection space. And so I do believe that at some point that context, you know, the next stage in that is going to be that they will add value to you. Now, I you know, have a bunch of apps, and they tell me that on a Saturday my commute into work is going to be 16 minutes. It's just not quite there yet. But I think that, you know, you're going to start to see that happen, and then that world of the temporary app will start to come into this. And you know, I think I just think we're going to have to build it, Asif. That's my belief.
Yeah. Now, I mean, Heyday. I mean, I don't know about you, Rob, but I've been using Heyday like the entire holiday season here. Like, I mean, every night I'm at a dinner somewhere or something, and I'm shooting like pics, and generating these heydays. Like, it's ridiculous.
It's great.
Like, it's addictive.
It is. Well, and it's great because at the end of the day, I can actually sit there and I can show my family, what did you do all day today, Dad? And I say, like,
exactly.
these, like 20 things, different locations that I've been into. And so,
exactly. It's amazing.
So we're getting there. So yeah, you see, maybe you got maybe 2 out of the 3 there, solid 2 out of the 3 there. Yes,
I'll give myself a 1.5.
Yeah, see, we're always harder on ourselves.
Anyways,
just wait to some of the predictions I'm going to be pulling out of my ass for this show. It's gonna be, what was he thinking?
Right. Anyhow,
the thing with prediction show is that it'll make or break you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, your company to watch was pretty good, though.
Yeah, I think that my company to watch last year was Square. I deviated from my love of Amazon, but my company to watch was Square, and they were very active this past year. But the way I categorize them is that they're projected to do $20 billion in transactions, which kind of translates to about $110 million in revenue. It's a crappy business that they're in. Made a bunch of acquisitions over the year. They actually, what was the last company that they bought? Evenly, which is basically a peer-to-peer, person-to-person transactions. And I just keep thinking, like, they just bought a company that is in the past. And these guys, my caveat to them is that I think it could be a breakout year for them, provided that they focus on their bread and butter, their small and medium-sized enterprises. I think they focused on going public and gearing up for public markets in 2014. And even at $30 billion in projected revenue or transactions that happen in 2014, these guys are going to do less than $500 million in gross profit, and then 80% of that goes off to the credit card carriers. These guys are just a processing, a transaction company. I would say that this is a step back, but they're going to go public and they're going to raise a whole lot of money and they're going to be fine and they're going to continue on. But I think 2013 was a stalling year for those guys. If you're looking for momentum, I mean, the credit card industry is trillions of dollars in transactions. These guys are just like this little speck. And PayPal is doing a kick-ass job as well, and my company to watch was Square, and watched with a bated breath, but nothing really happened other than more dollars flow through them.
There you go.
Disappointed. But on the other side, Apple, man, that was yours.
Yeah, I mean, I think they did some big things this year, and not the least of which is iBeacons, right? I think this is, I said it last week. I mean, everybody's waiting to see, what's the next iPad. Well, it's here. It's called iBeacon. It's amazing. It's going to power, so much of the future of retail and transactions and payments and all sorts of things are going to be connected to it. So I'm happy with that. As I just said, Locationary was acquired by them. They bought a bunch of little companies this year.
Crazy.
What's that?
It's crazy what they did. I mean,
yeah. So I mean, they've been buying companies to improve their mapping capability. They've been buying companies from a data perspective. I mean, they are focusing heavily on location and what that means. And I think to the second prediction from last year, the context-driven piece. Yeah. I think that's ultimately where Apple is going and how these things come together. So, I'm relatively happy with that. That prediction
relatively.
From last year.
Are you kidding? Yeah. Now add the verification through fingerprint scanning, and then you've got quadruple authentication for one of the biggest challenges, which is identity and payments. And I think that as all these other companies are struggling to do facial recognition and all this kind of stuff, it's proximity. A fingerprint scan or a thumbprint scan, and you've bought something through their closed loop payment system. I think that this is you could pick Apple again in 2014, which I know you didn't.
Absolutely.
You pick it every year because of the. But I just think that the motion that they had, I think that iBeacon, when people wake up and realize that it's enabled in every device that's running the latest operating system, all of a sudden you've got a mesh network of iBeacons. We talk about this all the time, but I don't think people understand the impact of this. It's going to be monumental.
They don't.
Sleeping giants, man, it is incredible. It is incredible.
All right.
So, biggest story for you. What do you think was the biggest story this past year?
Well, I think the one that I was excited about, given our sort of LBMA view of location across all media, was the Pandora story. So Pandora acquired a terrestrial traditional radio station, for reasons that you might not expect. But there are a lot of legal restrictions out there on the differences between what a terrestrial radio station can do and how they approach licensing and what they play versus what a streaming radio can do. And Pandora was just sick and tired of those rules and basically the sort of the penalties effectively that they had to deal with. And so they said, well, screw this. I'm going out. We're buying a traditional radio station so that we can get around this stuff.
Brilliant.
And I thought that was just good from that perspective. But the byproduct, which I think was the more interesting thing for me, is they were able to then take all the data they had from the Pandora streaming side in terms of understanding, people that live near this terrestrial radio station who were on Pandora. What do they listen to? What are their likes, dislikes, what's trending, and so on, and then use that data that they had from the Pandora side to then influence and change what the playlist was on the traditional terrestrial side. And I think these are the back to the power of data and what you can do with data. I mean, this is where it becomes really interesting. So for me, that was my sort of big favorite story of the year to kind of see how that deal came together.
But what you've said there is probably encompassing 3 or 4 huge trends that we're going to be talking about when we go into our predictions and things that we're looking into for 2014. But I'm on the same line, and I don't say this because I'm a fanboy of Jeff Bezos and Amazon, but I think Amazon's purchase of the Washington Post was kind of an equivalent to this when it comes to the commerce and the advertising world landing on your doorstep. And I think that who knows if Jeff Bezos knows exactly what he's gotten into with the Washington Post and buying this company, but I would like to believe that what he understands is that he now owns 500,000 doorsteps as a result, and he is trying to figure out a way to blend the online and the offline world for advertising and context-aware advertising and direct-to-purchase. So instead of ads, and then you have to actually create an action, what I'm hoping happens from this is that the Washington Post enables that transaction right from the newspaper, and I think that we're going to start to see that roll out over the next couple of years. But I think that this was a big buy, and it's also a great lobbying mechanism for him to get his message out in front of people. Newspaper carries weight, especially something like the Washington Post, who's $250 million kind of chump change, a little round in there for Amazon. Yeah. So, along the same lines, that was it. But I think that, my bigger kind of conceptual story from this past year is that I think that we've realized that payments are not as important as everybody thinks they are. Everybody raced into the payment world. It's the last piece of a transaction that is 1,000 miles long, and that involves 1 million steps, and everybody focused on 2013 in the payments, and I think that we're moving beyond that, and we understand that the app is no longer as important as we once thought it was, and I think it's about crafting your entire mobile experience, and part of that is an application, part of that is the payment process, but I think that from a conceptual standpoint is where we're moving into in 2014. I think that was the big story for me. A lot of you are listening thinking, we're past the apps? And we will be. You'll start to see that the apps will be complementary to the experience that you have on a mobile device or whatever device it is that you're carrying. So I think that was that was kind of it conceptually and tactically, Amazon, and then this move beyond apps. What about your biggest disappointments?
Well, I mean, I could go on for hours on my
the fact that I suck at predictions
with Foursquare, but I'll leave that one aside and say kind of 2 things that I was disappointed in. One was a product that came out from Google called Carousel, which was about basically bringing a visual search mechanism to bear around events in particular. So you would type into a search engine, Bruce Springsteen concert or whatever, and then it would bring up this horizontal bar that you could scroll through like in a carousel, like it was a circular around a carousel thing, and you see all these images of ticket information and venue information and stuff coming in from other feeds, data that they didn't own, like Ticketmaster and whatever, all coming together. That seems to have gone nowhere. And for me, not a big surprise because I mean Google's good at from a search perspective, they're good at doing what they do, and AdWords and optimizing that buy and placement. But changing the way people interact with it, I think that's a tough thing to do. You know, and so, you know, disappointed that they thought they could make it go, and you know, I had no hopes that it would. And I guess the other one for me, we were talking about beforehand, is about 3 years ago, there was a company called Every Block that came out, and we talked about them on the show. And these guys were, you know, basically breaking up, you know, the United States into a grid, and then looking at building, you know, highly valuable information on different parts of this grid around neighborhoods and street information and crime data and all this kind of stuff. And NBC bought the company earlier this year. And basically, you know, I don't know if it was an acqui-hire or what, but, you know, they did nothing with it. They ended up shutting down Every Block. And it's a shame because it was such a good idea and product, you know, on its own as a standalone without NBC. And they go and they take this thing and it just goes nowhere. So disappointed in that.
Yeah. Well, and I think that this is, you know, a trend that you're going to start to see is that, you know, a lot of companies that are being funded for now. I mean, there's a lack of startup and seed stage money right now, and I think that we're you know, starting to find ways, like with AngelList, to kind of overcome that. But a lot of these companies on an idea might be a feature of somebody else's business, but that business that acquires them doesn't understand what they're acquiring, and they just want the talent. And I think that that's what's happening here. You know, my biggest disappointment this year is that we're still talking about gross advertising dollars in the mobile space. Mm-hmm. You know, we're just, you know, I talk about this quite a bit, and I think that, you know, there's going to be a catalyst here. There has to be a catalyst for location-based marketing to really take off and for people to understand this. And it isn't about how much money is being pumped into the mobile advertising ecosystem, because we've talked about that in traditional media outlets. We talked about that in radio and then in television, and then we talked about that on the web, and now we're still talking about that in mobile. And mobile is a different medium. And it drives me crazy to hear that, you know, the mobile advertising world is going to be $20 billion. And I always ask, so what's the impact? The impact is that once we start measuring impact, when we start measuring the move from the couch to the store or from the mall into the store because of something that happens as a result of location, I think all of a sudden this industry flourishes. And that $20 billion doesn't matter. It's about the dollars that you've spent to actually enhance the experience with your customer. So if I spend $10 and it drives $100 worth of revenue in my store, I will do that forever. And those are the numbers that we should be focusing on. I complained about it last year. I complained about it all the time. The $20 billion doesn't make any difference. It doesn't mean anything. What matters to the businesses is how much revenue it brings in. And I'm still, you know, we still focus on this big number, and it drives me crazy. And I don't know what to do about that, but that's the biggest disappointment for me this year, is that we're not past that yet. But, you know, maybe I expect too much, just like you, right?
Yeah, it could be. It's that optimist view, right? Like, yeah. It's you know, we see the potential of what these things can be, and in the end, it just doesn't happen for whatever reason.
Yep. You know, I forgot one of my other biggest stories of the year. You know what that was?
What's that?
Here it is. Asif got a mic. That's the biggest story. And the biggest mic on the planet. How's that?
There it is. Look at that.
I love it. The sound quality got so much better. Maybe 3 months ago. I love it. Anyways, that was my biggest story. Should have started with that. All right, so, you know, rounded out that was last year, 2013. In a nutshell, so much happened, so much funding, so many acquisitions. It was a year of consolidation, and it will continue to be that way. Some disappointment, some highlights, not highlight. Highlight was not a highlight, but some highlights. And, you know, I would even say that, you know, Foursquare, I think, pushed the needle a little bit, moved a little bit forward. Although, again, totally unrelated contextual information that I get even today on as a result of that app just doesn't make any sense. So, I mean, I could be sitting in a restaurant and it'll send me notification that says, "Hey, you know what? Bill really liked the vegetarian omelet." I'm like, well, it's not available because it's 4 p.m, right? You're not smart yet, so stop pushing me stuff. Anyways, so there was a lot of stuff that happened as a result of 2013. I think that it pushes 2014 into a new realm, and I'm hoping, I don't expect things to change overnight, but I do believe that there are some tectonic shifts that are happening in this, and we're going to focus on some of these right now with what we think is going to happen in 2014. Asif, why don't you take the first one, buddy? What do you think is going to happen 2014?
What do I think is going to happen?
The Ottawa Senators.
I'll start with the first one for me is... we saw some early signs this year around this, but I think 2014 for me is going to be a big year when we see real metrics emerge that change, what we pay for as advertisers, right? Around mobile and location, right? So, we've seen the Place IQ stuff, which I love. We've seen Placed come out with their kind of mobile version of ComScore ratings. We've seen some interesting movements around Twitter integrations with TV. So I think we saw some early steps this year, but I think 2014 is going to be the year when there's a big shift from, hey, we placed an ad on the mobile device and somebody clicked on it, and the whole idea of pay-per-click and pay-per-view and all that just kind of disappears.
Thank God.
Or falls into the background in favor of real metrics that are based on location and performance and transaction. And so I'm all about that. So, Place IQ, Factual, Placed, all these guys are going to have good years around that kind of stuff. I'm excited about that. So that's one for me. Two for me is really, kind of the continuation of that, sort of the non-phone device that I predicted last year, but, an explosion around that now. And I think, for me, the big trigger was, just 2 months ago, when we saw the Google Outside piece in London,
yes.
Right, where this was the bus shelter with the digital screen built into it, and the ad in that bus shelter was not predetermined at all, but in fact completely determined based on context and who was there using Google Now technology and time of day and all that kind of stuff and weather and so on. And I expect we're going to see a ton of that. In 2014, from all the big billboard out-of-home companies. That's going to be the big move next year. Love that stuff at the LBMA. That's what we're all about. So I'm excited about that. The online-offline piece, that integration, I think that's massive. And that sort of ties back to the first one in the metrics piece as well, because, that ability to say, I saw the ad in the mobile device, in the online, exposure, if you will, and then did I actually go to the store and buy the product, and did it translate? And we talked about this a couple of weeks ago as well, in the context of, that the partnership that Retailagents did as well. And so I love this stuff, right? Where it's truly about here's an ad. You already know if the product is available in inventory, all that kind of stuff where you're tying the data together and you're making it a valuable, transaction, ultimately leading to a valuable transaction because that what you've presented is something the guy or gal wants. Whether it's there or not. You can get them to the place, based on traffic and time of day and all that kind of stuff, and you got an offer if it makes sense, and all that starting to come together. That bridge between the offline and the online world, started coming together. And then I guess the other one for me, is really sort of the evolution of, and we've talked about this a few times over the last couple of months. But I think we're going to see an explosion in the relationship, and this is sort of tied to the online-offline piece between mobile gaming and physical bricks and mortar locations, right? We talked about the Angry Birds stuff, Magic Places. We talked, about Ingress with Google. We've talked about some of these things, but I think this is an untapped market still. I think if you are a game manufacturer out there and you're building mobile games, I don't care what they are, any game out there that has virtual items, virtual currency, virtual something that the player needs to get to progress forward in the game, and normally you would charge money for that or some virtual currency for that. Look at and explore ways for bricks and mortar to help you underwrite that cost. I think that is huge. And I expect we're going to see a lot of that in 2014. And retailers are looking for ways to drive traffic, and it just makes sense to do those things. And then lastly is the continuation of what we've already talked about, which is iBeacons and sensors and all of that.
Crazy.
And, Yeah, I'll let you talk to that one because, but you know, these are the things I'm excited about.
Yeah, you know, I certainly think that. I think that this 2014 is going to be this year that is just marked by the adoption of these. Starting with Citi Field, we talked about this in New York, the home of the New York Mets, is that it's fully decked out with iBeacon and Apple stores. I think that it will just showcase the capabilities of this technology, and it will open people's eyes, and Nordstrom as well. I think it will open people's eyes like they've never been opened before. And I think that when you actually have that flow, you know, we call it attribution, right? Which is they've seen the ad somewhere. It's propelled them into the store. You've traced them through the store. You've put up deals in front of them to attract them to be able to, you know, add to their basket. I think that the experience in store is going to be so critical at this moment, but you're going to start to see that flow, and you're going to be able to attribute each step of the way through the data. I think that is the full cycle of the purchase process based on location, based on context and place. You know, that's what really gets me excited is these iBeacons, and I can't wait for people to just like scratch their head and say, wait, what? It is going to be so great to see that. And I think that attribution is going to be key. It's a statistic that we are going to start to hear much more about. We're already starting to hear about it everywhere. But attribution is going to be critical in 2014. And I think that will go to exactly your prediction about reducing and removing this CPM bullshit that we just get stuck in, right? Is that, no. I want to know that I spent $1 and I got $1.10 back as a result. And I want to know where. And then I want to eliminate the things that don't make me money. And that's what's going to, you know, we're going to start to see that. It's not going to happen. We're going to start to see that, though. It's all because of these sensors. Sensors, baby.
Sensors.
And I think that these things, you know, I think the wearables, you know, they're toys right now. But as soon as the Fitbit Force moves into the next phase of this, where it starts to send notification, obfuscates the device, puts the notifications on here. There's nothing that says that you can't automatically then start to push things directly here that I'm interested in, right? So I'm in a store, there's a beacon nearby, it's low energy Bluetooth, boom, boom, bing, you get the picture. It's going to be amazing to see, and I think that that's going to be cool. You can see a lot of innovative stuff that happens as a result of this over the next couple of years, but starting in 2014. I think that, you know, much to the chagrin of a lot of these guys in the payment space, I think that these closed loop payment systems will prevail. You're going to start to see a lot of adoption and a lot of extension of these systems. Like Amazon launched theirs this year. You've got PayPal, and you've got iTunes, and you've got Google Play, where I think that closed loop system will start to extend its tentacles into stores like PayPal is trying to do right now. You know, I think that this is phenomenal. I use PayPal everywhere I can, simply for that reason. If I could do it with iTunes, I would, because they have credit card on file. There's a huge amount of trust, especially with all the shit that goes on. Just happened with Target over the Christmas holidays, and the 40 million credit cards and the exposed pins and passwords. You start to think about these closed loop systems as maybe a viable opportunity here, and especially around location. And I think that with the triple or quadruple authentication, like we've talked about earlier on in the show, you've got a really, really powerful statement here that says, look, payments, forget it. By the end of 2014, we're going to add location and context, and we know who you are and your history and your spending power. We're going to put that all together, and then payments will happen through these closed loop systems. So I'd watch for iTunes to extend, Amazon to really be aggressive. I completely,
especially the iTunes and the PayPal piece. You know, those two in particular, I think those are poised to be, you know, sort of the biggest, you know, payments players in the space. You know, and I think it just remains to be seen, you know, what happens with. I still think there's an opportunity for some sort of carrier-based play.
Yes. Yeah,
right.
Totally.
In the U.S., it's that sort of piece that's just been sitting there, and nobody's really pushing it too hard, and the retailers aren't really all that excited about it yet. But it just makes sense, right? You know, it is also a closed loop, right? You already have the trust, you already have a billing relationship with your carrier. You know, and that simple idea of, you know, the geo-targeted SMS piece, you know, I get the offer, I'm interested in the product, I buy it online, and, you know, the payment shows up on my bill.
Yep.
That simplicity, you know, for me is interesting, and maybe it's another thing I'm disappointed in, that it hasn't progressed faster than it has. But hopefully, we get there as part of this movement around the need for closed loop payments.
I think it's even safer because the carriers look at this. They're credit givers ultimately, right? And the credit giver is a little bit different than having credit card on file. Right, so fraud happens very quickly when you have a credit card on file. When something is destroyed and the trust and the bond of the trust is destroyed, like happened at Target, is that now those credit card numbers are floating around the ether being used, right? And it's hard to rein that in. It's going to cost a lot of money. Litigation will happen as a result. It has already begun. But with the carrier system is that it's a billing system. It's a billing process. It's not tied directly to your credit card. There's a cap is what they could spend. And maybe it's $200 to begin, or maybe it's $400 based on your credit. They're giving you credit. So when you hit that cap, you have a limited liability ceiling that will come as a result of this. And I think that is, it's a natural extension. I don't know why we're not seeing that right now. You're right. I'm disappointed with that as well. But it is that closed loop payment and system, and I think that is going to pave the way for us to get rid of the focus of payment and focus on the transaction and bring it up a little bit to the loyalty piece. And that's what I think. Another thing we're going to see in 2014 is people realizing that this mobile experience creates a brand loyalty in their customer base. And I think we're going to start to really understand that, the good companies. And I think we're divided here. We've got 75% of the companies on the planet that are looking at mobile thinking, this is going to benefit my business. You got 25% who don't understand, and they're looking and saying that it's not going to. They won't be in business in a year from now, so we shouldn't talk about those guys. And of those 75%, you're going to have a leading 25 that are looking at this saying, okay, payments are done. Who cares? Now we're going to focus on how we can leverage this platform to create mobile loyalty. And I think that loyalty will shift for those guys. And they'll be the most successful retailers that are out there, or businesses that are out there that leverage that. And it's all going to be based on location and how many times you walk into a store and how many times you purchase from these. And I'm very excited about that. And I think my last one, aside from the stuff we've talked about right now, dashboards and all those kind of things that I think are going to be incredible, and the blending of online and offline and terrestrial and digital radio stations and television and Apple TV and all the like, is that I think that Amazon has to step it up when it comes to what's going on with PayPal beacons, Apple iBeacon. They have to get into this business or leverage that knowledge, right? Because what's going to happen is that Google and Samsung pushed NFC up the wazoo. It is the next it is the next transaction piece. It is for commerce. And Apple said no, and they didn't adopt it despite such a claim. Like, everybody was hammering Apple to do it, and they said no, and then they released iBeacons. And you can be damn sure that Samsung will actually then adopt iBeacon as a standard as opposed to NFC. So I think that this will be the end of this conversation of NFC, and it will be the beginning of iBeacon. But I do believe that Amazon has to get into this business. They have to move into something. They have to come out with something, adopt it, or it's going to have I think it's going to be a black mark on them as they go to their quest to destroy every retailer on the planet, which they pretty much will. So, I think that closed loop leads to a shift from the focus on payment into the focus on loyalty. I think that the beacon space is going to, create a new statistic that we will all care about, which is attribution. And I think that Amazon has to get into this space as well, or risk being left behind in that world. So those are mine. Big, huge statements. But And I'll come to regret this when we do this again next year, when we flip back and look at this and say, what was I thinking? Because some of this, we'll see it, emerge in 2014. But I don't believe, based on, my predictions, I think that we're 2 years away from this kind of stuff really, really being part of the common conversation.
It just means we've got at least 2 more years of shows to do, Rob.
Exactly, well, at least. I when I sit with Chuck Martin, I love doing it because we have this conversation and he brings up statistics, and I'm always marveled by the statistics. We end, I hit stop on the record, and then Chuck, I just keep thinking about this, is that we're going to be in business. We're going to be doing what we're doing for a long time because companies are not getting it. They're not adopting it as quickly as we had hoped. And it's good for people like you and I because we can help them. But it's bad for the economy. It's bad for companies. So there's a lot of work here, stuff still to be done. So those,
right.
I don't know how many, like 30 predictions? Go and build a business on it.
No, probably like 10, I think, though.
Yeah, but they're all overlapping. So, I want to kind of, take a step back. Those are the predictions. I would love to know, Asif, what you think. We're gonna come to our companies to watch in a second, but what do you think is going to be a big casualty this year? What in 2014, what company do you think, or what industry, or something that's going to be catastrophic? And I got a couple, but I'm wondering what your thoughts are.
Well, I mean, I think first of all, I'm going to start with the final death of Patch, AOL's Patch.
You've been calling this for 161
we saw
episodes.
a major pullback this year. Yeah. They let a whole bunch of people go. They're still hanging on to a few patches, but basically the thing's done. Like it just. The problem with the model of what they try to do is the notion and of what it was is valid, right?
Yep.
Giving a local community a place to go to find information about what matters to them and all that kind of stuff, based on purely on their local area makes sense. But when that's run by a big conglomerate like AOL, it just doesn't work. It needs to be run by the people in that community, right? And I think that's that's interesting. And it reminded me, actually, I don't know, Rob, if you caught, you probably don't get it necessarily out there, but the Toronto Star, if you can pull it up online, later this week, there's an article in there today about 10 people to watch, basically, for 2014. They've just picked 20 people or 10 people, and one of them is the son of the former Premier of Ontario, David Peterson, who's got this startup now, which is called, I think it's called Newsana, and it's basically Patch, but he's got a whole different way of looking at how to bring the news to people, and it's completely against the traditional media model. Like it's all about you need to be approved to post content to the site. The stories that you post get rated, and the higher your ratings, the more top of the fold you get, and all this kind of stuff, right? So it's actually like kind of crowdsourced news generated. Cool. It's very interesting, right? But it kind of like when I think about Patch and what went wrong for me, it's really about not giving the ownership to the people in the community. It's as simple as that, and it's unfortunate because I think it's something that's absolutely needed in every community to have that kind of thing. It's the we talked about this I think 3 years ago. That idea of in the old days, like our grandparents, they would go to the coffee shop or the corner store or the whatever, and that would be the point where you would meet up with people, or the local pub or whatever it was, and there'd be the news board postings there of what's going on, or so and so is available to babysit, and you'd pull the thing off and all that kind of stuff. We still need it, right? But we need it in a digital format, and I think that's where Patch could have excelled and failed because they took the control away from the actual community. So that's my casualty, and I guess my sort of 1B is I've been watching this kind of the Zarleys of the world.
Yep.
And we haven't heard much from the Zarleys of the world at all.
No.
Big fanfare, great idea, got some great traction off the hop, but kind of didn't go anywhere. And it's the same kind of thing, right? At the end of the day, in order for that to work, it needs to be replicated in multiple markets. It's about local communities, right? And it's about ownership, right? And I think at the end of the day, all of these things, the revenue that's generated somehow needs to be, at least partially retained in the community, right? And I think that's where a lot of this kind of fails. So for me, it's those hyper local communities, I guess, is what I'm getting at. Is ultimately my casualties, whether it's Patch or Zarley or anything like that.
Unbelievable. I think that I'd have to agree that it's very hard to scale locally on a global size, right? I mean, we talk about that all the time. It's very difficult to do that, and we're starting to see that. And the flip of it is that it's very difficult to actually make a lot of money hyper local like this. And you know, even the newspapers have struggled with this. And that's one of the things that I always wonder is that, you know, the newspapers should be your local newspaper should be owning this industry, this space, because they have the relationships, they have the distribution, they have the advertisers, they have the dollars. They just don't have the insight, the foresight, and the strategy behind it to be able to implement it. And
they need to hire Rob Woodbridge.
Well, we tried that, didn't we?
We did.
We tried that, yes. Didn't work out so well for, you know, and in fact, the company that I was working with, which rhymes with Schmost Media and is the largest media company in Canada, still hasn't implemented a single thing around a tablet strategy for over a year. Like, that's incredible. A year has gone by. Think about all the revenue that they've lost. Anyways.
Wow.
You know, I think my casualty, aside from the newspaper industry this year, is in 2014. You know, it might sound as a good conversation piece, controversial maybe, is Square. Like, I think that these guys are headed towards an IPO. I think it's going to be a disastrous IPO. I think they'll ride the waves, and this is a company that has a, you know, that loses, you know, out of its transactions, out of its revenue, you know, 80% of its net profits, of its gross profits, actually. So even if they do $1 trillion worth of transactions, which they're not going to do because the credit card industry is already just trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars, and Square is just this small little piece. I think that, they're barking up the wrong tree, and I think that their acquisitions this year, their stall of 2013, maybe they've driven great revenue, and people love Square, but there's so many competitors now that are doing it. It's so cheap to get into this space. And I mean, you know, Shopify got into this space just by licensing, white labeling somebody else's technology. I just think that this is a commodity play, and Square's got to, I didn't see the aggressive moves that I would have liked to have seen Square do during 2013. They gave up on their small and medium-sized enterprises. They started listening to their own press and reading their own press, and so my casualty this year is going to be Square. They're not going to go bankrupt. They're not even going to get acquired. But I just don't think that they are going to surprise and delight anybody. I think that it's going to be pretty lame for them.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's, for me, the miss with Square was, they had all the fanfare, they had the market attention. They had the first dongle, device of.
They made it smaller this year, though.
And they had that opportunity. And for me, I look at it like the old, Gillette story, right? They should have just given the thing away for free.
Yep.
To everybody. Everybody like on the planet should have one of these things in their pocket. And then, how did Gillette make the money? On the razors. You need the razors, right, to make this thing work. And that's what we're going to charge you for. And I think that's where, now we have so many copycats and so many people in the market. It's a total commodity business. When they had this chance to kind of own it and have everybody have, the first one in their pocket, and and they didn't do it.
It's funny because they went out and... it just shows you, they've raised a whole lot of money, and their valuation is well over $4 or $5 billion. It's crazy, the valuation. But they focused on creating what they thought was that local merchant network, which they thought was a good idea. And I think we talked about this early on in the year, is that this is not a good idea. Because as you understand context, it doesn't matter that I'm at Starbucks and there's a Jiffy Lube next door that also takes Square. That's a very thin connection between retail. I don't care about that. They didn't add the context layer, the contextual layer to this. And I think that even by creating this community, it diverted their focus. And they went into the the cash register, which is an interesting play. But then Shopify, who hadn't raised all this money by that point, came out with their own version of that, which made much more sense for Shopify.
Yeah, and they all have it now. PayPal's got it, got here. I mean, everybody's got one.
So it's all commodity now, and they haven't done anything in the last year that has demonstrated that they understand that and that they're moving forward. Right? There's no moonshot from these guys in 2013 to set them up for something other than an IPO in 2014 and an extraction of cash and then a move on. I think this is like, if they do that, and investors be warned that it's like a Ponzi scheme, really, because the money that they're doing in transactions, you might get all caught up in the $20 or $30 billion, but the net revenue is not enough to actually fuel this company's growth. It's just not. So disappointed, right? And I criticize Facebook for only doing $6 billion in revenue in the year. but that's like very profitable revenue, right? So the difference here is that this is they need to come up with something that's a little bit more interesting than that. So Square.
Rob's casualty of the year.
$20 billion casualty.
There you go.
Yeah. All right. So what do you think? What do you think about breakout companies? What companies are you watching? I just added a third one, so I'm all over the place with this because something dawned on me as you were talking. But I mean, so you have any companies that you think
Well, I'll start with my big company for this year is and I'll put aside my love for eBay, PayPal, and Apple, for the moment, and go in a completely different direction, just to kind of pick up on where you just left off with casualty. While Mr. Dorsey, Jack, that is going to fail on Square this year, according to Rob, I think he'll do quite well on the other side, which is my company for the year, which is Twitter. I think Twitter is setting up for 2014 to be a extremely location-aware company, and ready to make a lot of money from it. We talked just a few weeks ago about the Pitney Bowes deal, licensing their data, so that we can have precise geo targeting, when you tweet. I expect that the numbers, I think we're like 6-7% of people right now when they tweet share location. I think that's going to be like 30-40% by the end of next year. We're going to see huge movement around that, and a lot of that's just going to be, very passive location sharing too. People will just not care. Or not have to make an active decision to do that. It just becomes part of it. And then you see the ads that Twitter's lining up to start to bring into the streams now will be completely contextual and based on that location data and time of day and previous search terms and all the other stuff that goes with it. So I'm excited about where the potential for Twitter goes. And I think that connection to your prediction from last year, which is the living room piece, which is Twitter moving heavy into social, TV, analytics, and all of that. When the location piece comes alongside that, then we're in for some real interesting stuff. So Twitter's my big company for 2014 to watch. Excited about what's going to happen there. And my secondary one is Shazam, and we talk. We both love this company. What is there, like 400 million people now with this app? They're adding like thousands every week, and we've talked a lot in the last few months about their movements into Shazamming TV commercials and radio, and then taking that into remembering what you Shazammed in TV and radio, and then when you walk into a store, connecting to the in-store audio. So they're kind of bringing that retail piece in, which is, and kind of the online, offline, again, comes back into the mix here. So I think Shazam's well positioned. The one thing that I think is interesting, and I have no idea what their valuation is at all. I haven't looked at it. But, to your point of Amazon needs to do something to combat iBeacon,
boom,
wouldn't it be an interesting combination to see an Amazon and Shazam come together?
I love it, Asif, because you know what? Owning the living room. So with the latest version of Shazam, it is always on. It's always resident. It's in the background. It listens to the music. It catalogs it automatically for you if you choose. And then I think that when you walk into a store, some beacon technology, something has to happen as a result. It can't just always be audible. It has to be like a tie-in with Shazam, Amazon, iBeacons, whatever that is a powerful.
But can you imagine, it Shazam something from the TV, and then it doesn't even let's even bypass bricks and mortar for a minute, and just it goes right to Amazon. Yeah,
it's insane.
Right?
But even think about this: is that if it Shazam something on television, so that it's identified something that you enjoy. So there's got to be some way, some trigger. Just because I listen to a car commercial doesn't mean that I'm interested in buying a new car. Right?
Absolutely.
But so there's got to be some kind of rating system or understanding of who I am. Maybe it uses the Twitter stream, whatever it might be. So Shazam does that, and then while I'm in the store, this is when Amazon owns it. Really, literally, it's like through iBeacon or whatever it might be, or proximity. I'm thinking of buying something. This is where Amazon drops a deal on me, right? It says, okay, buy from Amazon right here, and walk out of the store. And I think that something's got to happen along those lines. But Shazam is an enabler.
And I think there's this uniting thing around audio, right?
Yeah.
That's interesting for me, right? So, the Shazam, does that phenomenally well.
Well, they own it.
You've got companies that I think are struggling now, like Shopkick, that come from audio at retail.
Yep.
That could be an interesting mashup there. And then you tie Amazon into that mix. So I mean, it's great when you can sit here like Rob and I and be the quarterback and kind of put these things together, which in reality never happens. But it's nice to dream.
One day this might happen.
Yeah.
Well, I love that. Those are two great.
Yeah.
Twitter and Shazam.
Well, you know who will pull something like that off. It'll be only Marissa Mayer can do that, right?
Oh, I can imagine.
Because she's got to buy 6 more companies next year at least.
Imagine. Well, if Yahoo bought Shazam, I would have much more respect for Yahoo. I mean, they've done a great job, certainly of staving off the beasts and turning things around. Give credit where credit is due, but
absolutely,
Shazam.
Yeah.
Well, and I would look at maybe Facebook looking at those guys as well, because Facebook, apparently is losing it with the younger generation to Snapchat and all the others. So that's another big trend that's going on. But I think that, there's a theme here that we've been talking about, which is this contextually aware, loyalty play, surprise and delight. These are words that you've heard us speak about for 3 years now. And so, my breakout company, this little company that I think is going to have a great year because of all the trends that are pointing in that direction, all the arrows are pointing us, is a company called Keep.com. KIIP.com. I love these guys. Brian Wong is the CEO. He's a young dude. He's like 21. He's been on the show. It's one of the best episodes that I've ever done because he's irreverent. He talks like he should. He is sick and tired of the advertising industry like we all are. And what he is very interested in doing is showing attribution and showing loyalty and creating a surprise event. And I think that this is something that, that's why I think that Keep is right in the right spot at the right time when it comes to the emerging trends. And I think 2014 is going to be one of these years that they're going to just emerge. So it's a company that I watch very closely because I hope, and everybody I talk to about Keep hopes the same thing, is that this is a trend. This is a company that we want to succeed. So Keep, for me, is one of these guys, simply because of everything that we've talked about right now. It is at that intersection. So if all those things that we've talked about come true, Keep should be a $1 billion company by the end of this year.
There you go.
He'd like to hear that. A smaller play here is that I think that you talked about this last year at the very end of maybe it was 2 years ago, our prediction show. You dropped Uber, and I think that Uber is going to have this year, like they did this. We featured it last week actually, about their delivery of the Christmas trees, right? So same day delivery of Christmas trees. They have this great network of drivers. I think that is going to expand, and 2014 is going to be one of those years for Uber. We should be watching what they do for last mile. They are same day delivery.
Completely agree. I completely agree with that.
It's going to be huge. And that was the one I just added. Because I think that Uber, it didn't deserve to be at the end of the show. It deserved to be second to the end of the show. But the company that I think I'm intrigued by is Under Armour. Man, look, I believe in this quantified self, wearable technology. I believe that it's, fabric are going to be woven with sensors all over the place. And I think that it's going to start with the physical freaks, and then it's going to move into medical, and then it's going to move into mainstream. And I think we're going to start to see that transition into 2014. But they bought a company called MapMyFitness for $150 million. They have like 9 million users. And there's got to be something that comes from this with their fabric, with the shoes that they have. Everybody wears Under Armour in the gym, and then everybody starts to wear it outside when they're golfing. So what's the tie-in with sensors, wearable technology, your phone, MapMyFitness applications, that network and commerce and location? I think there's got to be something that plays in here. I'm fascinated by Under Armour. I love what they're doing. I love this company. They're kind of like this year's version of Nike, moving into the hardware space and the software space, and I'm so intrigued by what they're doing. Don't be mistaken. These are not just a garment company. This is a technology company, just like Nike made that transition. So I got Keep.com, Under Armour, and Uber for same-day delivery. Those are my three.
Love it.
Those are the companies I'm watching, and I love them all. If I could wear Under Armour every day, I would. I love their technology.
Well, who doesn't, right? But
Yeah.
it's I think the only challenge I have with that, love Keep, love Uber, super love Uber. I mean, like I think you're bang on that one. And I'm intrigued. Like you say, I think that's the right word for me on the
Yeah.
Under Armour thing, right? I just for me, I think there's one more piece for them, which is some sort of wrist
Yep.
hardware technology that they need to buy and roll those things together, because we're not always wearing Under Armour. Like you know what I mean? Like we might be doing something else, but we probably always have, one of these wrist things on, some device with us. And I think the software side of what MapMyFitness has and brings to the table in terms of the intelligence piece that comes with that, married up against what they can embed in the clothing and what might be on your wrist. I think the combination of those three things is interesting.
Yeah. Well, you know what? You never know. That's what's so great about this thing, is that the conduit could be the phone, but you're right. I have done all these extensive tests with these devices, the Fitbit Force. I've done the Shine, right? And
Yep.
I've done my moves, and now my Wake Up application is using the A7 chip so that it tracks my steps. And I've tried all these things, but there's been never anything that has been to my benefit, like given me more steps than the ones I wear on my wrist or the ones that I wear on my shoe, right? So I don't have my phone on me right now. I don't have my phone on me all the time. So there's this challenge. These devices, right? They remove that from me simply because it's much more accurate, especially around sleep and patterns and so on. So I'm with you. Maybe we'll see that. Maybe that's their 2014 play for Under Armour. And I think it'll be well done, unique and well done. So
Excellent.
that's it. So
we're done.
Recap of 2013, a little bit of fun with our predictions for 2014. What happens? Some of the companies that we think are going to be dominant in 2014, or at least have an impact. Take a little bite out of 2014, and we'll see. We'll come back in a year from now and see how we did. Which I'm already anticipating an offer. So I threw Uber in there as like a gimme, right? Just
there
like
you go.
Uber in every episode. But let us know what you think. How do you think that we did here? What do you think? Do you think Square? Do you think Twitter? What do you think is going to happen here in 2014? We'd love to have your predictions. And please leave a comment wherever you found this, whether it's on the LBMA's website or on tether.tv, and we'll respond. And I would love to actually bring it into a dialogue over the year and see how we did. Maybe we'll do a mid-year wrap and see how things are going. With one mulligan, we'll be able to take one mulligan.
Let's do it. Yeah, and the obvious prediction that Rob didn't bring up, which is Springsteen's going to have a top 10 hit.
He's not only that, he's going to be. It's going to be hard pressed for us to continue this streak of 162 episodes consecutive when he's on the road, because we're going to do a lot of traveling. A lot of traveling. The man is 64 years old and touring. I got to get my kids there, so I hope to see you guys on the road someday out there. So please, let us know what you think. Let us know how you think we've done this year. This is, I think, by far been our most solid, our most professional. I think I left last year's prediction show saying, hey, listen, we're not pros, but we're getting better. You have to admit that. We're getting better. We have an audience, a growing audience of probably around 500,000 people a year that tune in. It's our goal to grow that. So if you found value, please share. That's the best thing you can do. I know you hate doing it because this is probably your secret sauce. You get all your information to be able to run your business from Asif and I, but share. We'd appreciate it, and it's our currency.
And give us those star ratings, and all that kind of stuff. We appreciate all of it.
Yeah, it's a plea for now, but we would love to hear back from you. It has been an absolute pleasure doing this for you for all of 2013. It's been a trying year. We never missed a single episode, and the only reason we're doing it is because of the feedback that we've gotten from you guys so far. So thank you very much for being here for the year, and I can't wait to drive through 2014 and do another prediction show at the end of the year. So we'll see how things go.
Excited. And Rob, as always, a pleasure spending another year with you every week and doing this, and looking forward to a next one. So to you and to all of our listeners and viewers and everybody out there, a happy and wonderful new year in 2014.
Happy New Year. Happy New Year. See you later.